Welcome to Two on One, the internet's only talk show. Certainly the only one hosted by two disciples clergy talking theology and pop culture and its intersections. I am your co-host, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
Ooh, and I am your other co-host, the Reverend Stephanie Kendall, and it is good to be with you all today.
Yeah, it's good to be with y'all too. I know you're talking to the deuces out there, but you know,
Our beloved deuces.
I covet our time together. I really do.
I do too. And for all you deuces out there, we are really grateful. I put out a call this week that we've got some really cool stuff coming up, y'all, like in the works, like some really cool stuff. Merch and other opportunities for us and things. So make sure you like and subscribe all that we are doing. And please, if you think about it, ask your friends to do so as well. Share the podcast with your friends. We get such good feedback, and our views, y'all, those of you who are downloading and watching our stuff, top notch. A plus for you all. Those numbers are incredible, but can't figure out why we're not why the social media numbers, people aren't following. And so if you have an idea about that, something you want more from us, you want some interactions, let us know. And get those numbers up, because we can do some really cool stuff once we get a certain amount of followings, which don't translate to how many of you are actually watching and listening to us.
Right. And I know, like, you think, oh no, if I follow them, they're going to spam me. We're not. We're just.
I won't. Yeah, I just won't. We won't send you. We don't have a newsletter or anything. We're not sending you anything. It just helps us.
Yeah, you'll just know when things are happening with us.
Like, exactly.
One is now live. It's great. Yeah. Hey, Spiff.
Hey, Arthur.
This is the end of September, right? This is the end of September 2021. You may be listening to this far in the future.
Hi, future us.
Overlords are being kind to you. Also, yes. Justin T. Meyer, watch out. There's a car merging in front of you. I know Justin listens on his commute and he tells us that. Anyways, it's the end of September. Leaves are changing, and it's still 90 degrees in Wichita because we just had Fool's Autumn and now we're in second summer, but there will be actual autumn shortly. What's your favorite season?
Fall. Particularly October, specifically when my Giants are in the playoffs, because we get Orange October. And
I celebrate Red October. That's weird.
Do you? So that is specifically my favorite, but also I like the good crunch of walking on fall leaves, as I saw someone on TikTok call it the other day. They're like, I just crunched my first fall leaf. And I was like, I will steal that verb.
Crunch. That's a good one. I like it.
It is. And well, if I remember who it is, I will give them a shout out. I do not remember. So
as seasons change, you know, like in the life of the church, there's a lot happening. Like there's St. Francis, if people do pet blessings, and there's World Communion Sunday. And like we're in that, I don't know about you, we're in the dead sprint with stewardship and personnel and ministry fair, and we have budgets. I have begged people to work on beginning in May, but we put it all in October.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the best way I can segue into this. We want to take a minute and make sure you know that 2 on 1, thank you for listening, is sponsored by Jeff Wonrow Designs, creator and purveyor of beautiful handcrafted liturgical textiles that fit a spectrum of spaces and a variety of denominational and personal needs.
That is so true. And we are so grateful for Jeff. Did you know, Arthur, that it is World Communion Sunday this Sunday?
I did, because everything happens in October.
It's true. They just pile everything in. And as we are disciples, I'm assuming that you, as well as we do, celebrate communion every single Sunday. However, if your denomination does not observe the table weekly, it might be time to consider a special stole, particularly for the table, for communion, for your Eucharist. And Jeff Wonrow has incredible options for you.
Also, if you do celebrate the table every week, you can also wear these communion stoles. Are you doing a pet blessing in honor of St. Francis, perhaps? It might be time to get a little wild with animal prints, and Jeff Wonrow Designs has options for you.
He really does. What about Advent stoles?
Oh, Jeff Wonrow Designs has a pantheon of preparatory paraphernalia perfect for your parish's purveyance and proclamation of the mystery of Christ. Oh, dang, for the paschal mystery. It was right there, Spiff. It was right there.
Friends, if you haven't guessed, Arthur writes these promos for us and Jeff, and these tongue twisters are all him.
I was going to give it to you, but I thought that you would be mad.
I know I'm not mad, but I do love that. So if I can't even read my next part. So as we have said before, if you process, there are processional banners. You gave me this week. If you celebrate the seasons of the church year, there are seasonal banners. Do you need frontals up front or paraments on the perimeter? If is your altar needing alteration or your lectern a new lease on life, Jeff Wenrow Designs has got you covered. And that's true.
Jeff Wenrow Designs is celebrating 16 years of making ordinary time extraordinary, and clergy just like me and Spiff love their pastor stoles, deacon stoles, chasubles, copes, and other vestments. They're proud to include basically the full range of Christianity in the inclusivity and workmanship of their designs.
It's true. So whether you are shopping for a mitre, a face mask, or anything in between, and seasons change, so should your vestments. Jeff Wenrow Designs is just the best. We all know I love a good costume change, a little outfit. I have different things for every different. I was on a call earlier this morning. This was not what I was wearing. So all that to say, make sure that your stoles, your vestments, paraments, banners change with the seasons and change with the movement of the spirit.
Absolutely. Visit jeffwenrow.com, jeffwunrow.com for a catalog of stoles, vestments, paraments, banners, liturgical face masks, along with ordering information, customization options. And be sure to use the special promo code 2on1, all one word, all letters, for 15% off your next order. Once again, that's 2on1. Do that at the very end of checkout.
Yes. And as Arthur always says, and I believe we're trying to get Jeff to really pick this tagline up.
I like it.
I like it too. These stoles still steal the show. So check out jeffwenrow.com after our show today.
All right. That's another promo down. I
did it.
It's actually kind of a spiritual practice for me at this point. Like I light a candle, I write a Wenrow promo. I
prayer for the Wenrow.
I like exhale as I send it to you, and it is a good thing.
It is saying the website has shown up in my nightmares. Or maybe it's a dream, but it turns them into like, because I speak very quickly, and to do Jeff Wenrow and how he spells it, it's the W. WU doesn't, for those of us that speak quickly, it doesn't roll off our tongues well. And so I had a dream the other night that I was just like, like,
what if we bought Jeff NROW.com and we gave it to him to redirect, and then we could just say it's JEFF UNROW.
Then we have to tell people that it's not triple spelled. How I think
it's too complex.
We lift up Jeff Wenrow's name in all of its beauty and glory, and we learn to say it.
Absolutely. I just have a complex because friend of the show, Shonda Jha, told me it sounds like I'm always confused when I spell it. And now I think about it literally every time I do it. So thank you, Shonda. Hey, let's bring in our guest because it's time to talk Lucifer, and it's time to talk to Kelsey Creech.
I love Kelsey Creech and I love Lucifer.
Well, good news. Here's Kelsey Creech, and we're talking about Lucifer. Kelsey Creech, welcome back to 2on1. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to see you, Kels.
Good to see you too.
For those of you that have forgot or don't know, Kelsey and I work together at the park. So that is, she is our resident seminarian. And so super fun to get to work with her every day, and is also how she gets those invitations like, hey Kels, what are you watching? What do you want to come on? And she was like, I got to do 2on1 again with this season finale of Lucifer, because she and I have watched Lucifer together, not together, but just, apart. And we text, and we were both like, this is a show.
It really is. I do want to note that my 11-year-old kiddo, who has a very interesting diabology, she was like, well, we can never watch that. I'm like, we can't watch it while you're 11, but it's certainly something to consider, like, once your brain forms more.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, it's about the devil. I said, well, is it about the devil? And it kind of is, but it's certainly not, because, now there's time travel. Okay, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Lucifer, or at least vaguely familiar with it, it is a show that was for 3 seasons on Fox. Is that correct? And then it was saved from cancellation twice. It finally concluded
from the fans. it's important. I think that we don't recognize fandoms enough in the good work they do. We think of them as like those like screaming spaces of like, oh my gosh, they're so great, but the fans saved this show.
Well, and in the style of Chuck, in the style of Community, in the style of Supernatural. Anyways, it is a show about Lucifer Morningstar, who is the devil, kind of, but not really. He is a fallen angel living in Los Angeles, and the show went from being a police procedural of this will they, won't they, with a detective and the actual devil, to so much more. I recommend you listen to our first conversation about Lucifer that is available in our archives. But now the series has concluded, and as always, we remind you, we are a spoiler show. So if you want to be surprised by the finale, pause this, go watch it, come back to this.
Exactly. All right, let's just, as finales go, what did y'all think? Did you like it? Did you overall? And then we'll get into the minutiae, the details of it. But how did it sit with you as people that have seen the rest of the show? Do you like how it tied up? Kels?
No, I found the finale really, like, in some ways it was really satisfying, and in other ways I was like just disappointed, because one of the things that I've loved about Lucifer from the beginning is the way that it sort of turns theologies that we expect to be there on their head. And the finale just didn't quite do that. It did in terms of, this is the spoiler thing, right? I can just talk.
Just talk.
It did in terms of taking, the devil and making the devil, instead of the ruler of hell, the healer of hell, right? That is a really interesting theological idea, but I was just unimpressed in the way that it left like our understanding of suffering as to be okay as long as it brings about something good, kind of unchallenged.
Yeah.
Arthur, what do you? I want to know who the devil's licensing board is, and who his supervisor is, and why he's doing therapy without a license. Because you know what? That's something the devil would do.
True. So for those of you that have not, again, picked up on this, the show concludes with Lucifer, who in the season 5 finale, I believe, battles all of his siblings to become the like inherent next person to be God. And then he decides to stay on Earth. Lots of things happen. His and Chloe's daughter comes back from the future. There's time travel in new ways, because there's always kind of been time travel, but there's time travel in new ways. And then he decides at the end that his call is not actually to be God and to rule over all the things, but to help those break their cycles of shame and guilt that are keeping them in hell, and to through kind of a therapist lens. The therapist office that he builds in hell also is a exact replica of Dr. Linda's. But that space, he then, talks to people in hell to hopefully get them out of their own hell cycles or hell loops, and to go to heaven. So, I mean, I'm with Kelsey. I think it's an interesting concept. I think what does the devil as healer look like? And if that is his real purpose, if that's how he has, because he self-actualizes, right? In this world, angels self-actualize. And so that is how he has grown. And I think that there's something really beautiful to that, but also it doesn't name the healing or the suffering in a way that I found to be, helpful, in a way that this show has been helpful before, to help move spaces. The thing I did really like was Ella's freak out at the wedding when so Ella goes on this journey, right, and is like, figures out that everyone are these divine creatures, like the celestial realm is kind of all around her, and as the person of like deepest faith, I would say, in that space of like more kind of traditional, I think she's Catholic, I don't know if she's Catholic, but she goes to church, does the thing, right? That she gets pissed when they say like, listen, I'm the one that has believed in you all the entire time. Why did you not bring me into this? And I thought that was a really interesting way in which I wanted to kind of start this conversation today is, do we shelter people too much for the truth of faith? And that comes again from Ella saying, like, I was getting really upset and hurt that her friends, you know, kept this from her in a way that she was really positioned to receive actually pretty well. What do you think?
So, you know, it's interesting to me. I think we've talked about the whole, like, my campaign of anytime I go to visit a church from now on, I'm taking paints with me because I'm going to paint floating dead bodies in everybody's Ark mural that's inevitably in the children's wing.
So watch out, everyone that invites Arthur to their church.
Because like, it's a horrible story. Yeah. Oh, look, the animals are so happy. Right. The sole survivors of a global cataclysm, and bodies float. I think we allow people to become complacent in the development of their faith, and we don't challenge it, because to challenge it makes people uncomfortable, and to make people uncomfortable means we might alienate them. And we don't create space in which challenge is important. And perhaps that's a role that we have to understand, that since we glom literally every construct of Satan, the devil, Lucifer, everybody into one, the challenger is part of it. What does it mean to say, great, your faith really works, but now the world broke and your faith broke. How are you going to plug these leaks? Or how are you going to build a better boat? I'm mixing metaphors like crazy. I'm sorry.
I don't know, Kels, what do you think? Do you, as someone who is, and I don't, this is not a knock, I think it's important. Like, you're 15 years younger than I am. I think we've discovered, like, you're younger than I am. So and I came like to faith like older than you are now, right? At all. And so do you feel, as someone who was just like brought up in the church, that, and or even now, that that the church kind of hides things from its people?
I don't know that I would say that the church hides things from its people, but I think there's definitely pieces of the Bible that we push under the rug. I think that's really clear if you look at our lectionaries and how we just like never really touch Judges. There's like the parts of the Bible that are hard, that we don't really want to talk about, we find ways not to talk about.
Well, Psalm 139, where can I flee from your spirit? Oh, also, I hate with a perfect hate, and I hate everyone that you hate, oh God. Why don't we read that, haters? But
yeah.
Also, shout out to Clever Ministries. You guys are great, and we're totally open to being sponsored by you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm just, I just think of, again, I think scripture is one way in which we do that, but I think like just our history, right? How many of our white churches are talking about like who actually built our churches? How many, like physical property spaces, and or the history of America, right? How did we get here? What is our true history of our founders, right? As the three of us are disciples, like we don't talk enough about the intersection of our history and racism and biblical interpretation in a way that I think that we're really called to move people forward. And I think that is the part where like, that's the healing that needs to happen. Like, in my opinion, right? That like, I think that there is some work there of healing. And I love the idea that Lucifer turns into this healer-esque type person for that kind of reason, right? Because we think of like racism as racism is absolutely sinful, right? And we think of sin and devil, and like we equate all of those things. But what does it look like to say, no, it's actually, those of us that think of ourselves as not the devil, we are the ones that are in that sinful space. And how can we help each other heal? How do we self-actualize through education and community and communion to actually start that healing process? I don't know that that's even a question in there, but just more of like where, for me, as I was watching, I watched the entire series, obviously, because I'm a big fan. And then I rewatched the final 2 episodes last night in preparation for this, and was like, oh, like that's our call. Like we so often want to think of ourselves as really the Amenadiels, right? Like we don't think of ourselves quite as God, but we think of ourselves as like better than Lucifer, right? Like we're not the devil. But what if we are? And what if that's not the bad thing that it has to be, but it gives us a starting point for our self-actualization to grow into something new.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful and a really solid point. And if you watch like Lucifer's journey during the show, you know, he has like a whole half of a season where he like has his devil face because he's just like, he just can't break out of that, right? And it's I think that's when he's really seeing himself as the devil, right? And like leaning into the like, I am a terrible person. And I think that that's an important piece of our journey, like learning that we are not as perfect as we like to see ourselves. And then I also think in the final season, I don't think it's in those final 2 episodes. It might be the second to last one or the one before, but Lucifer goes and like apologizes for several different things. And so what does it look like for our journey to begin with? Like, I am not as good as I think I am. I am not as good as even the people around me, and like learning to be better, and then saying like, I'm sorry for the ways that I hurt you when I wasn't my best self.
So there's definitely this process of amends that I think is fascinating. And it's, I mean, apologies mean nothing. Or rather, apologies by themselves mean nothing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I struggle with. I think a lot of people do. At some point, saying I'm sorry doesn't change anything. Actually,
not if it doesn't change you.
Precisely. And so I saw a lot of themes from recovery work in this final season, which the joke is always, of course, you're going to see themes from recovery work, because if you know any writers in Los Angeles, you know that most of them are in AA. I don't think that's breaking confidentiality, because it's all over the place. Anyways, it is that centering thing of like, yeah, you're not as good as you want to be, and you're not as bad as you think you are. You just are, and you're becoming. I will say I thought it was fascinating, the idea that the devil would want to get people out of hell. So can I shift gears into diabology, because I always love it.
Sure.
My dad once asked me the question why, when a football player misses a pass in the end zone, he doesn't like point down to the devil, like when he catches it, he points up to God. And I said, that's because the devil only roots for the New England Patriots. But I made a Cowboys joke during announcements at church. I was pretty proud of myself because I'm in Kansas. I was like, Dallas Cowboy Stadium is the tornado shelter for the Metroplex because there are no touchdowns there. And those Kansans thought it was hilarious because it was about tornadoes. And
also, you're not a sports person, so I'm really proud of you for your sports.
But what does it mean that one can get out of hell whenever one wants? 2, that it's about, hell seems to be, if you're not self-actualized, that is how you exist. If you are not one who is seeking wholeness, that's where you will stay. Is that a fair representation of what hell may or may not be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it, like Lucifer says, hell doesn't need a ruler, he needs a healer, or it needs a healer, right? Like that's the phrase that he uses. And I think it's because we're our own rulers of our own hell. And like, because we are the ones that it's our shame and our guilt in this world of Lucifer again that keeps us in hell. If we find ourselves in hell in the afterlife, it is because we are there, because we are keeping ourselves there. And so what he is trying to help do is break that loop, right? So it's breaking generational trauma. It's talking about like, and I think part of that is also why he's, why Amenadiel actually goes to be the Amenadiel god or whatever they call him. So Amenadiel becomes essentially God, and he employs, for lack of a better term, like engages his siblings to come to Earth to actually help break these generational trauma cycles. Like, I mean, I think at the root of this, what they're saying, like, therapy is the way out of your own hell, right? Like it's a big push for community involvement, mental health care, and accountability. And I think that that's really, for me, such a unique understanding of what hell is for each of us, again, because it places it in the self and in the personal and in the relational, for what is for us, and not like everybody who does this goes here and is stuck there forever, right? It breaks any kind of generalization, which I think is really important, especially in this day and age in which we just see people blanket statementing, so-and-so is going to hell. First of all, what does that mean? And why? And it's, if we can break these generational traumas, we will act better and be better, and commune better in this space. Yeah. I also think, sorry, clearly I was like thinking all about this morning. I also love that none of them, like Ella doesn't leave the church, right? They like that the hard work gets done and no one leaves. I named earlier that the disciples need to do a better job of naming our history, right? And talking about the sins of our history. I chose as an adult to be a disciple. I got to choose my denomination. I was not brought up in it, none of that. So I got to choose, and I choose to stay because I choose to love these people so deeply that I care enough to fight with them. I care enough to push them to be better, and to do that hard work together. And so for those disciples out here hearing me, that we need to talk more about, our founders and how race has played into our identity, both historically and currently. I love our disciples tradition, and I'm only naming that because I think we can be and do better.
I just want to note that I accidentally became a disciple. I didn't know that joining the church would make me one. And once I joined, the regional minister for the Southwest at the time literally chased me down and made me fill out pension fund paperwork. And then I was like, oh God, okay. Then they're like, you have an ordination interview. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
So I was a Presbyterian before I went to Bright, but I wasn't really a good one. So, oh, speaking of Presbyterianism, let's talk about chosenness for a second, if we could. Kelsey, do you believe in predestination or double predestination or any sort of election? And if so, or if not, this seems like an ordination interview question. I promise it's going somewhere. Where do we stand with predestination, y'all? And about destiny and about fate?
This is great. I just had an ordination interview on Monday.
How'd it go?
It went very well. Yeah, I love this because it's not all the time that I get to sit around and have people ask me theological questions. That's why I'm very happy to be here.
I'm the only person who wished his final interview went for hours and hours.
No, you're not. I love mine. I talk about it all the time.
We should just no, we shouldn't get to
like we should let Kelsey answer the question.
We should. So.
But no, I do not believe in predestination. I think I am pretty strongly in the free will camp, if we're going to look at the fate free will binary Lucifer is talking about.
Okay, so what is the point of free will?
The point?
Yeah. For you, how do you understand why we are given free will? Sorry, that's a better, I guess, way of putting that.
I think it's a little bit about the self-actualizing thing that we've been talking about, and the power to make our own choices, right? Because when Lucifer returns to hell and he's healing, it's not like the therapy is about helping people to become okay with who they are, to become okay with their choices. It's about becoming better people so you can make different choices in your hell loop, right? And that's how you get out. And I think that right there is a huge piece of what free will is. It's the ability to make the choices that are going to shape our world and our future and the way that we feel about who we are.
Ooh, that's nice. Yeah, totally agree. I think it's interesting, right? So for like when I was a kid, I remember people telling me like, well, this is just God's will, or this, and like all of those things. And I think that gets back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier of how do we sweep things under the rug for people, right? Like we don't talk about, you have choices of how you want to enter community and how you want to enter relationship with God and what that means. And so often we just say, well, it's because God wants this, or, all of that. Kate Bowler's book, Everything Happens for a Reason, and Other Lies I've Loved, is really helpful in deconstructing some of that theology. Hey, Kate. And so for me, I've always, once I learned like the language of free will and how that applies to who we are as God's people, like that part of our createdness is to be able to choose the spaces in which we inhabit, our actions, our relationship to God, but also doesn't change God's relationship to us, I think is really beautiful and was always really helpful for me in why I think I engage in these harder conversations, and also push for more truthful and honest conversations for younger generations. Because I think so much of what we do in church, and I would love to hear y'all's opinion, but so is deconstructing terrible theology that people have been brought up with, rather than being able to say, let's cast this vision forward. How do we want to be better and move better? And it's more like, okay, so I see that I'm trying to get everyone here. I see that you're down here. Let's move up, right? Rather than, and you're always kind of playing that catch-up game. But if we had some free will taught and understood younger, do you think that might change that or help that? Either of you?
Please.
Yes, I think I wanted to say earlier to what you were saying, I think one of the places where we really see ourselves denying our agency and our own ability to make choices in situations is with climate change. Because every time that a hurricane comes or we get snow in Texas, we're like, oh, there's like act of God clauses inside of all the leases that we take out, right? It's we blame all of the weather things on God, when in reality, like, it's the choices that we've made that have gotten us to this point where we have climate catastrophes happening all the time. And I don't think we're taking enough ownership of that. And I think that is a place in particular where I think churches could be talking about it more and naming it more. But also so many other things like you've named. And I think I don't know, before I came to seminary, I was very heavily involved in youth ministry, and I just talking with them, they are ready to take on so much more than most people are ready to give them. So yeah, I do think that we shelter, and it could benefit us a lot if we were talking about things more openly and really naming free will and our agency and making the choices that have gotten us here earlier.
That's
I'm
good.
doing a daily study, and it's not as daily as I want, on 2 Corinthians this year. And
Ding, ding.
there it is. I know, ring the bell. And within that study, there's been, you put up a little party emoji. For those of you who are listening, Spiff is kind of mocking me, and that's okay. 2 Corinthians 5 deals with one has died for all, therefore all have died. And it's interesting to me because I read different commentaries, and all of them basically say Paul is suggesting that universally across the board, Jesus Christ has died. For is one of those great prepositions we're not getting into because there's a variety of what for means or how for means. But Christ has died for all. So therefore, every human being is covered or participant in Christ's death. Mm-hmm. What it then suggests, as Paul talks about this ministry of reconciliation that is transformative, is that those who accede isn't the right word. Those who actualize within this death, who say, yes, like, great, what is this gospel? What can I do now? How am I affected and effective in it? That is when discipleship begins. And presenting that to high school youth, I'll never forget that. I said, look, you get to do whatever you want with this life. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing you can do to earn the zeroing out that has happened. Like, God doesn't have a ledger. God does not care the way we think God cares. So therefore, why not do what is hard and what is just and what is righteous? Because, and one kid was like, but I could also go on a killing spree. And I was like, sure. Don't, because that's not a way to live in community. Anyways, I've been in 2 Corinthians 5 for like a month and a half, and I'm ready to be done with it. And yeah,
it's all right. It's there for a reason.
I was clearly stalling because of this interview. So there we go.
It's exactly what you were waiting for. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting. And for all of it, like, what's our own participation in those cycles and in the hell loops of ourselves and others, right? Because I think part of also what happens in hell in Lucifer is that, like, you aren't like you might be, your hell might be you by yourself, but primarily there are other actors. And I realize that they're demons, but like, people are a part of your hell loop, right? So what does it look like? As I kept watching and thinking back to these hell loops, and then you inevitably think of what your hell loop would be, or maybe that's just me, but like where I carry my own guilt and shame. Like what would it look like if you were that liberator, right? Like if, you know, if in this life you help people, you know, say, that thing you did was really shameful and guilt, you know, like awful. Like we can name that, and we can also name how you have grown and how you know, how you are living your life, you know, and like help people with, give them the tools of affirmation, maybe, if that is the tool, I'm not sure, but like to say, like, to name, I don't think we name often the growth we see in people. It's a practice that I've tried to do with my friends, like especially when I'm like, oh wow, who you were 5 years ago and who you are now is so different. And not that I didn't love you then, and I still love you now, but like I just want to name that I see that work you've done on yourself, and that's really great. And in ways, and I think I say it out loud because I'm hopefully saying it to myself, I can internalize some of that. But as I was thinking, I was like, oh, there are these actors in people's hell loops. What if like the goal is to just never be an actor in someone's hell loop? What if the like part of like Lucifer's there to help them get out, right? And like help them work through that. But what if like how we partially understand our own goal is to never be a part of someone's hell loop other than a liberator?
Well, what does it mean to be the person who says, you've harmed me and I forgive you, and now let's build something else? Because that's not something they'll want to say over and over again in a hell loop. What? Oh, that's good. So what if it's to prevent, what if we take our part in breaking generational and interactive trauma?
Yeah.
No, I think I'd rather stick to just being petty and callous. No, that's a really good question. Kelsey, what do you think?
I actually think I really disagree.
Lay it on me. This is great.
Because what causes someone to have a hell loop is spaces where like they are personally feeling guilt or shame about the way that they have treated someone. So I just think for me, if I were to adopt like an ethic of trying to make sure that I was never in a hell loop with anyone, it would cause me to be a lot less vulnerable. Because to feel guilt and shame, you have to have had people be vulnerable with you and made poor choices. And if I were trying to avoid that all the time, I would just be, I think I would live less fully.
Can I ask if you're a practitioner or understander of the Enneagram, what your Enneagram number is?
Yes, I am an Enneagram 8, wing 9.
Okay, that's interesting. I would have put you in as a 3, but I think I do that just because Spiff is right here radiating
all the 3 energy.
Also, did she have a pastor where she may be serving, have her read some Enneagram work? Right.
So it's I think about it with guilt and shame. Like I'm not somebody who really deals with shame. Like I understand it. I understand it intellectually. I live in fear. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Like fear is my bag. Every time I have a cup of coffee, honest to God, I'm like, climate change is going to make coffee prohibitively expensive in the next 20 years. Every time I have a cup of coffee, I think that. And then I'm like, I need to drink more coffee than I should today. It's so dumb. But like, and speaking of which, I'm going to pour a cup while I'm talking. So like guilt and shame, like I will reframe guilt right out of it. Like I will acknowledge harm and I'll be afraid of it for a while. And oh my God, I've ruined this relationship, or oh my gosh, I've destroyed something. And this is terrible. And then like I move past it. And maybe that's a gift and maybe it's a curse and maybe they're both of the same thing. What about fear? What about anger? What about that deep, unsettling rage that 8s feel that perhaps I don't? And perhaps, I mean, like, and I get it. And I think Spiff encounters shame completely different than you and I.
I live in shame every hour of every minute of every hour of every day. Again, that's why I think I'm so I'm practicing like telling people like, right, like their growth, how all of that happens, because it helps me deal with my own shame in lots of different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Anger, talk to us about anger.
Yeah.
Anger. Oh, I live in anger. Yes. Although as my dad tells me all the time, anger is not a fruit of the spirit. And then I tell him, well, it's not listed.
See, she's an 8. That's such an 8 response. Such a good response.
But
Yes.
righteousness is.
That's true. That's true.
Anger breeds righteousness.
Yeah. Sorry. While we're doing quotes on anger, one of my favorite quotes, anger is necessary for hope.
Right. Amen.
Yes. But I think anger super clear in Lucifer. And I really resonated with this scene where Rory is like actively trying to kill Lamech, and Lucifer is like, stop, you can't do this. Like, you have to be better than him. You have to be better than me. And then she talks later about how she like had all of this anger and she wanted to kill him and like didn't. And then it's like the "you saved me" moment from that. Getting back to anger. I feel anger all the time. I can say I have never really wanted to kill anyone in my memory, which means I have forgotten those moments. But I guess I wonder there because I don't always see anger as a bad thing. I think anger can be used in bad ways. And killing is perhaps a bad way to use anger. You know?
Okay, so that's the poll quote about an 8. Killing is perhaps a bad way to use anger.
And my 3-ness is like, but it would break relationship. And how will I move forward and achieve the things that I need to when we have murdered people?
Especially in this, right? Like the relationship with Lamech was already broken.
Yeah.
But I say perhaps because I think there's a way that you can justify Rory's desire to kill there. And I think had she killed him, there then just would have been like future becoming okay with that and like healing in that way, right? Like I don't think that act is unredeemable is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like it's like with Cain in season 3 with Tom Welling. Like Cain was just over the top. Like it was just, he is just purely evil. And if I may be so bold, I will say that was the most boring season, because like there's no such thing as pure evil. There's perhaps no such thing as pure good, which may get us into a bit of theology that we may not want to go down that road on. But okay, let's try that. Is God purely good?
It depends on what you think about God, which is such a disciples answer, I think.
How are you finding God? Absolutely.
Yeah. I think in terms of like our understandings of good and evil, we see in the Bible, there are things that God does according to our scriptures, which like we can have conversations about how that works and whether that's really who God is. But there's definitely things God does that like I don't think are good. There's things that scripture tells us God has authorized or asked for that are not good. And I don't know, I tend to subscribe to process theology and that God, like us, is always becoming. And so as we are trying to become better people, theoretically, I believe God is always trying to become a better God.
I like that. And by the way, I want you to know that I invented process theology at Bright Divinity School. I had a professor return a paper and tell me I should have cited Whitehead if I was going to use his ideas. And I said, who's Whitehead? So like I just came up with that on my own and then learned that it had already been done. What are you going to do?
That's my experience with process theology too. We don't have any classes on it here. So I started writing about it and one of my professors was like, you should look into Whitehead.
Like Hartshorn has already made this argument far more obtusely. I apologize for that aside, but yes, okay, so if God is in process, that means the universe is in process. And that means ultimately, I think that probably lines up with the theology, especially of season 6 of Lucifer, that everyone is in process. But we also saw this like weird fated thing happen, or what does it mean that it will? So I hate time travel as a device in shows. I hate it. Like Lost, oh, we got to do an episode on Lost someday, because
That may kill me, but yeah.
yeah, like time travel is a cheap tactic. But I thought they did a really great job with the daughter, whose name I forgot, and I'm sorry. Where Rory. We've been talking about Rory. Sorry. Rory, you know, what she knows, and therefore, you know, she doesn't get Back to the Future to ever where like she starts to fade out or she radically changes. I've always thought it'd be fun in a time travel thing where like the person changes all the time. They're never the same shot to shot, because every choice you make ultimately alters what they are. But then you get into timelines being set. I won't talk about time travel. I like the Austin Powers rule of it. Please don't think about it too hard. Just enjoy the film. So,
Well, and I don't know. Well, I know I just lost my train of thought. Great one, Spiff. Crushing it.
well, okay. So if your child showed up from the future, right?
Yeah.
And, right? Like,
Right.
okay. And said, I'm furious at you because you totaled my car. Would you never get into a car again? And if so, would that child disappear? And therefore, like,
I mean, she names that at the end, right? Like she's got it. She's like, when Lucifer's like, I would never leave you. Like, that's insane. And because he wants to be a parent, like he is actualized in his own dreams, but then he gives up his own dreams for, you know, the sake of the world in a real way, right? Like, and goes to like help people. And Rory's like, if you fix or change anything, I don't get so mad that I come back here and make you like, and we have this entire experience.
right.
It's cyclical, and I get it. But I'm with you on time travel. I think it's I think it's a problematic concept, and also I sometimes I'm just like, it's 1000% happening. So it's the same way in which I'm like, you know, very disciple-y answers, right? I can say this is what God is for me now in this place, and it is not what God has been in history for me, and it's probably not what God will be tomorrow for me.
But time travel can't happen because of germs, because germs evolve much faster than human beings. So if I travel back 100 years, it would be like Columbus landing in the New World. Like I would obliterate the planet, because I have like they don't have SARS, right? And I, you know, like what am I carrying on me right now that the human body in 1890 is not equipped to handle, aside from my charm and of course the computer that lives in my pocket that is the source of all information in the world.
You'd be the only one on the Wi-Fi though, so you'd be totally
it'd be lightning fast. Yeah. I'd just be like, hey Tesla, I mean
yeah.
I'm sorry, that was a digression and a half.
No, I think it's time travel's hard, because also I think is a memory not also a form of time travel? I don't know, like for me, in the way I've processed grief in the last couple of years, which I think is something that, you know, we've all just kind of had to lean into, like I hold on to like memories, and I play, you know, like the good times with my loved ones in my head. And it feels very much like a form of time travel.
Well, Spiff, what is grief if not time travel persevering?
Exactly. So like, I just think, I don't know. I think that it's an interesting space to hold. And if we believe in you know, a Jesus now and here amongst us, is that not a form of time travel that has done well? The Spirit of God is a time traveling understanding of our call to community.
Well, but then time travel obliterates the idea of free will, doesn't it? Or ultimately it limits it far more. Like the whole reason that God cannot be omniscient is because that means God has a knowledge of the future. If God has a knowledge of the future is already set. If the future is already set, I'm just a meat puppet following programming, and I don't really have a soul so much as I have like code. Oh my God. That got me out of that. I would have kept going if that alarm didn't go off. Just to announce that I have in fact already done my Psalter prayer today. So
Excellent.
Yep.
I don't know, Kelsey, what do you think, time travel?
I think time travel in the way that we understand it in like films and things, it absolutely does all of the things that y'all have listed.
Back to the Future is not a documentary.
Oh man, I wish. I love that
Bring
movie.
up your kids.
But I don't know that it would have to, just because I don't know. As far as I know, it's not real, so it can do whatever it wants to do. And in Lucifer, I was really disappointed with the way that they used it. Right, this is the suffering thing I was talking about at the beginning, because I don't think that just because Rory came back, she necessarily has to live her life exactly that way. And I think perhaps I'm operating from like the Loki understanding of time travel, where there's sort of like one line and then time travel can happen outside of it, but that's not like real time. These are bigger thoughts than I really want to think right now.
I like it though. Also, Spiff, if we're talking about Back to the Future, who was the president when Marty McFly headed back? I was trying to get you to say Ronald Reagan. So I could
Ronald
go,
Reagan, and then you were gonna do a I was like, I knew you were
I was
gonna.
going to
Yeah.
Ted Lasso you, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Kelsey, like this has been a digressive episode, at least from my part. And thank you very much. You've been a marvelous guest, and we're so glad to have you back to talk Lucifer. Please come back again when we're not all so weird about time travel. Maybe you already have. Ooh, okay, so we are cognizant of our time, and we thank you very much for spending time with us today. I would like to move us into our final question, which Spiff asks so beautifully.
Only because I've done it so many times in the future. No, but Kelsey, yeah, thanks for coming on. When I saw this episode, I was like, oh, we're going to talk about this. The line, just even specifically the line of hell doesn't need a keeper, hell needs a healer, is so indicative of, I think, the work that, we're all trying to do as a church and as a community. And who are we if we are only our own keepers, and if we are each other's healers, I think is what this show really postures us towards, and I'm grateful for that. So as is our final question every week, what biblical narrative, theme, person, book are you most reminded of in Lucifer, specifically season 6 finale?
Well, I think last time I came on, we were talking about Lucifer, my answer was Psalms.
Right.
And I think my dog might be off. Sorry.
Scout's not a fan of them.
I live with animals.
We all do.
But I think intentionally not picking like obvious themes of like forgiveness or eschatology, right? I think I'm really reminded of the Job narrative. Because we see, in Job, obviously, it's like Job has such a great faith in God. Like he'll take on all of this suffering because he knows like his relationship to God is stronger. He just doesn't understand God's ways, right? But he takes on all of this suffering with the idea that that is what God wants for him. And Lucifer, at the end in the finale, takes on all of this suffering in the future that he really doesn't want to go through, so that he can actualize himself, right, as the healer of hell. And also because Rory has asked him to. And he, I think Lucifer's probably not super convinced that him doing that is necessary for him to eventually discover that he wants to become the healer, or for Rory to live, right? Like, I'm not convinced that Lucifer believes in time travel the same way that Rory does, but it's because Rory has asked him to, that he agrees to do it. And that just, it has Job vibes for me.
I love that. And partially that is also part of my answer. Arthur, can I go next? I know I generally go to you.
No, please.
So I generally don't like Job as a book. And I've talked about it because it's not a God I understand, but it is a devil I understand, because the beginning of Job is God and Satan having this bro match, right? Or whatever, they're this conversation. And I've always thought they're not opposites, they're in the same space. And I always for me, and this show particularly, it lifts Lucifer into that that divine realm with a little bit of more equity than socially we give him. And so I thought I don't really like Job for that reason. Also, like, I hate the idea that like Job feels content with a new family after his old family. Like, there's no, yeah, that's a whole other episode. And like Lucifer,
This is not my beautiful house.
but so I thought, oh, I can see Lucifer in as the devil in that story, pointing out spaces in which humans need to grow, right? He's pushing Job. And so my original, well, so it's a two-parter. I'm like, the devil is, or Lucifer is part of that Jobian divine realm, but as an operator of grace. That his job as someone who self-actualizes is to help others self-actualize, and how we most often think about that, and or at least allow ourselves to move forward. And because I really like how you postured or understood anger as the conduit for hope. That's kind of that grace form, right? Like, you need to understand that there's going to be grace at some level for you to even want to move out of your shame and guilt and cycles of oppression and all of that. Because if not, then it's just, there's no why. There's nothing that like greets you on the other end that says like, and you can be better, and we are here to help you move that space. And I think that for me, Lucifer as an agent of God's grace is what I see most, especially in this end of understanding his not dominance but healing as a his call to this space, or call to this world, cosmos, I don't know.
Are we
largesse of life?
Are we doing cosmic Christ now? I'm going to go with the temptations of Jesus in Luke specifically, because the temptations are shortcuts. Like, the real temptation is not turn these stones into bread so that you can eat. It's fix it. Like, here's all of these problems, fix it. This is the simplest solution. Like, turn all these stones into bread. Everybody gets to eat today. Just keep doing that. There's plenty of stones. Make more stones if you run out of stones. It's very much that. What does it mean that is it's almost a counseling session. It's a coaching session. It's okay, if you're going to do this, it's going to be hard. So why not just jump off and have angels catch you? Because then boom, everybody knows. But that, like, I have a lot to say about the temptations of Jesus Christ, and also the band of the Temptations, which I'm happy to do on another episode. But right, like we can't have something that's purely evil. It's boring. We saw that with season 3. Like, it's boring to have something that is purely evil. It's boring to have something that's purely good. We have to have nuance because we're human beings capable of it.
I like it. I what an interesting way to end Lucifer.
Right. And we have reached the end. Kelsey Creech, thank you very, very much for coming on and talking to us about Lucifer and time travel and all of the digressions that have happened today. It is always a pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you for coming back, especially as you came back from request, which is excellent. Do note, by the way, dear friends, that you can request people and we'll solicit them, whoever they may be. You can contact us at 2on1project@gmail.com. Also, like, subscribe, and share literally everywhere that you find the 2on1 Project, because then we like that, and you like us, and we're all friends. Hey, Spiff, do we have an announcement about next week?
We do. We so excited. Next week, friends, in preparation for the season finale of season 2 of Ted Lasso, Warner Ramirez is coming back, and we're going to talk 1 through 9, or no, sorry, 1 through 11.
Wait, so that wasn't the finale? Episode 10 wasn't the finale?
Stop it.
No, I'm dead serious. I thought it was only 10 episodes. There's more.
There's 1 this week, and then there's 1 next week.
Shut the front door. That is great news. Okay, friends, I'm going to end the episode on that news. Werner Ramirez is coming back to talk Ted Lasso with us, and we're so excited. Kelsey, we're so excited that you were with us. Thank you. On behalf of myself and Spiff, actually, Spiff can speak on her own behalf. This has been 2on1. Deuces, everybody.
Bye.